Hello. So, this video is going to start off a little bit different. I've been testing the changes to Ember, and it turns out that Ember is back in control of her abilities, like she was at around, let's say update 8 or 9, whenever Ember was actually part of the mainstay meta, and she was used everywhere. Now, you can totally use her anywhere, because she's awesome again. So usually I would start with the build in a video like this, but I'm just going to start with the results of the build first. Simulacrum, load up. Okay, so we're gonna go with the basic, why would you use type Telio, where I put in some of the stronger enemies. You know, let's not even do any butchers. Let's not even, because they don't usually do much. Actually, you know, they're good for showing off the actual damage that things can really do. Okay, so enemy level 50. That's pretty high. You know what? Let's turn it up a notch. Let's go to 60. Actually, you know what? Let's go to 70. I'm using the Soma Prime, so we'll bump it up 20 levels, just for posterity. I'm sure it'll be fine. So level 70, all these enemies, most of the special units that we get in most of the end game tier 4 stuff. Let's see how Ember handles this situation. First, obviously, with this kind of group, is you need to take out the Ancients. Not particularly difficult. Obviously, with level 70 enemies, you gotta be careful no matter what frame you are, because they do a lot of damage. And those guys are no fun if you let them get their drones out. Good thing they're predictable and they chase super fast. Oh, look, everyone's on the ground. How unfortunate it is to be them. Oh, there's another, there we go. Ancient around here somewhere. I knew it. Alright, got rid of him real quick, like. Oh, I let those rockets get to me. What is keeping them from taking damage? Oh wait, do they just have that much armor now? That might be what's going on. Let's take care of the smaller enemies before working on them then. You out. You are no more. Maybe the Soma Prime actually wasn't the best weapon to take here. Here. There we go. It's just gonna take more bullets than normal. That's fine. I've got all the time in the world, clearly. It's not like these enemies can stop me. So that was a bunch of level 70 enemies. And aside from the bombards, who do quite a bit of damage, very significant, they didn't get to my energy, which is also health. But yeah, Ember is pretty good at crowd controlling now, as it turns out. it turns out that she's pretty good at controlling the crowd. And, like, the only thing stopping you is armor from doing a lot of damage. Like, let's see. Let's look at what happens to, like, what's the max I can go to? 95. Let's do some level 95s. Let's do some level 95 corrupted butchers, and we'll have them all chase me. Or we'll see if they can get to me. Because honestly, I don't think they're going to be able to. Oh, they slide a little bit. They're having a time of it. I have to walk away a little. Imagine what this is like against enemies with no armor, like Infested. Much larger group. Let's see how this goes. Ember fires it up. Okay, so, based on those demonstrations, you could probably assume what this build is for. This build is for knocking down everyone, and this build is for keeping them knocked down pretty much indefinitely. This utilizes your core with an obscene amount of range. Decent damage, too. At lower levels, this will just melt everyone. And an augment for Ember. But let's go look at all this stuff, as opposed to me just telling you what it does. So, with 17.5, which happened a little under 24 hours ago, some changes were made to Ember. Specifically, the duration on her 4 was removed, and some ways that toggles interact with her were changed. So now, I'm using this build with her. And now you might be thinking, why the hell are you using Rifle Amp? That doesn't make any goddamn sense. The honest answer for that is I have not changed the polarity so that it can be corrosive projection yet. So, that is very much advised if you are going to use this build, in that you would use corrosive projection. I'm using Rifle Amp because it gives me the appropriate amount of points for this build. And I'm not using Energy Siphon specifically because I don't need it, and because my 4 is always on, essentially, it would never activate anyway, so it actually would not be, like, beneficial to me. It would be, like, essentially completely pointless. So, or it is, don't do this to me. So, the crux of this build is this augment, Firequake. Enemies hit have a 100% chance of being knocked down. That is super good. And it's awesome, and it makes it so that Ember goes into the late game. Because, originally, I was looking at all the stuff with Ember, and I was like, they made changes. Awesome. Let's see what I can do with these changes. And I was like, well, her damage really can't scale into endgame very well when enemies have armor. So, I started looking for ways around that. And it turns out that Firequake exists. Now, the reason that Firequake wasn't being used before is because Ember's 4 really sucked because it was impossible to mod for. Removing the duration aspect from Ember's 4 means that you can totally mod for it now, as long as you don't go into negative duration. And having just flat 100% duration is totally fine. So, I took Fleeting, Streamline, Prime Continuity, put those together, gave myself a high amount of efficiency, gave myself regular duration, which is still good for my other abilities, and then I started just giving myself lots and lots of range. And then I offset that just a little bit with an Intensify. And this build comes together to do decent damage, on the trash mobs or infested, mostly infested trash mobs, honestly, butchers and stuff like that, but mostly it knocks everybody down. Everyone that is not an enemy that cannot be knocked down will be knocked down. And then also, you get the stun from enemies being on fire sometimes, the panic state that they can go into, all that stuff. And it turns out that this makes Ember really, really good for like a pretty large variety of situations. Because her 4 like heats through walls, I suppose, it is knocking people down preemptively. So whenever you go into a room to clear it, they're on the floor and it's like just everybody's already on the ground. Just finish them off. Kill, 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 kill. This is really good with single shot weapons that do a lot of damage. Soma Prime probably wasn't the best choice for showing that off. And there are definitely better weapons, like the Lex Prime, which I'm actually in the process of formatting it and stuff, so it wasn't as powerful as I needed it to be to kind of show that stuff off. But that's fine. Basically, we have a build that actually works for Ember and is actually really good. Because, like, let's take this into low-level content, or low-ish level content.
Suits you.
And like, we'll switch this gun out. What is a mediocre gun? What is a gun that is I need to go. I scroll way up. A lot of my good guns are at the bottom. What is a mediocre gun? The Burst Prime's pretty good. The Braton Prime is a good middle of the roader. This is in the middle of the road. Well, we'll say that this is a medium gun, not something as OP as the Soma Prime. So we're gonna go. What's a good middle of the road? Oh, we'll go to Sedna. Sedna is a decent middle area. Yeah. And we'll do an Exterminate here. Shouldn't take very long. Alright. Let's go exterminate everyone on Marin. Kickstart my engines and start killing everyone. Now keep in mind, these are like mid-level enemies. A large bulk of the enemies that you'll be fighting, like, usually, are gonna be around this. Like these enemies are roughly the equivalent of what you're gonna find in, like, towers 1 through 3 of the Void. Tower 3 is going to be a little bit tougher than this, but not by any large margins. And this is what this build does here. So if an enemy is strong enough to survive this fire, they're going to be knocked down and then just like handed to you for elimination purposes. And that turns out is it's really actually super good. And you can see that it's actually clearing this room preemptively. And knocking down the stronger enemies that can survive 1 or 2 blasts, and then just the people that can't survive just get burned to a crisp. And it's a nice cookout of Grenier that we're having here. Where is this other Grenier hiding? I think they moved his spawn. Okay. That was weird. But this is what happens to some of our, like, mid-ish game tier enemies. And these are Grenier. Grenier are the faction that I would consider the toughest, and they're the most resistant to fire because they have armor. Like, this is what this does. And keep in mind, also, there is a power strength version of this mod that does, or of this build, that kind of does this to the entire star chart. Anything in the star chart that is not a boss or immune to powers is susceptible to the other version of this build, which we'll show after this. And it goes down pretty much just like this. And the other version of this build also still includes Firequake. So you still get the knockdown effects. The downside of the version of this build that uses more power is that your build is less efficient, so you need to keep it up more proactively, or you might have to use some energy increasing mods and such like that.
Another job well executed.
But that's the kind of control and killing that can happen against low-level enemies with this setup. So, let's show off the high damage version of this build. So, because we can do this now, this is a nice feature of 17.5, we can go into abilities and view stats without mods. These are the basic stats, and these are my stats. So, energy per second, it costs less than 1 energy per second to keep World on Fire going, which means it's just over, like a minute is a little under 60 energy, which ends up being fine because you can work, like, if you're killing dudes, they'll drop some energy. You can keep yourself like sated in pretty much all scenarios. There are a couple like really draining scenarios that it won't work, and that's kind of how it is. Also with this build that I don't need to show off as much, Accelerant is actually really good in this build because you have so much range, and Accelerant is a small stun. So if an enemy is really giving you trouble, you can use Accelerant. It has a huge range that is larger than your 4, and you can just stun them at long range and then go get them. It works great. Fire Blast is a little bit worse, but the wave is good for getting guys knocked down even more. The only thing that sort of suffers in this build is Ember's 1, which is Fireball. In the lower levels, Fireball is still good, but one of the kind of hidden benefits that didn't really need to be discussed about Fireball before, because Ember wasn't brought to most farms in the Void, if there are like containers and stuff hidden like just inside the the walls that like come up and like reveal them, and it's like, oh, I have more loot, and you have Carrier, you can actually fireball that wall and it'll blow up the loot containers, and Carrier will bring it through the wall for you. So you can actually get some extra farm in the Void with Fireball, and that's actually a good use for it because it means that ability technically stays useful, albeit in a different way. And getting those extra random mods can be very profitable, like getting the extra quick thinkings and stuff like that. So this build actually helps you in most of your abilities. Fireball, no matter what you do, is going to fall off. It's basically unavoidable, unfortunately. Accelerant ends up being really, really good with this build because not only, like, you will stun them, and then any fire damage you do is also better, and it lasts a while, and you cast faster. Like, all of that stuff is, like, just fine and great. Like, Accelerant ends up being actually good because your World on Fire is doing a more constant crowd control, and your Accelerant is kind of your much longer reach, like, backup crowd control, which ends up being good. Fire Blast is still fine. It's not your mainstay in this build, though, and I don't think it really will be. I don't think it can get that strong. So, let's finally look at the stronger build, or more powerful. So, this is the other build. Now, this build does not seem that much stronger, but it is 1% off from being double the damage. And you saw what that damage was doing to like level 20 enemies. This will do essentially that to the entire star chart, and to help you with keeping your energy like nice, I added a flow in to give you a much higher power pool, to give you more energy to work with, like if you get enough energy to like fill yourself up, to work around the larger drain. So with these mods, your powers look like this. You drain a little over double the energy per second. You get pretty much double the damage in the same range, and I believe there's a little bit more status chance involved. Your Accelerant stays just as good. Your Fireball is fine. It does enough damage to clear like basic mobs, but your World on Fire will certainly be doing that for you. And then Fire Blast, it kind of all remains the same. These are just the higher damage values, higher energy cost variants, essentially. So if you want the higher damage, and you're doing, like, let's say, like Draco or something, I'm sure this would be fine there for a little while. But yeah, that is like the crowd control, like flame, fire, and death Ember stuff. So for a long time I have like bashed Ember because she was terrible, and I am holding by that. She was terrible. This change makes her good, which is what I wanted for so long. Ember is a cool frame with fire, and it's nice that she's usable now, because I'm not gonna say that Ember is like, oh well, she's the best, she's the super meta frame now, because I don't think that's true. I think she's on par with a lot of frames at this point, and I think a lot of frames were brought up with 17.5 to be a lot better. Valkyr and Nyx immediately come to mind with that, where they were given a boost to kind of match themselves with a lot of the other frames. And that is really good and really important, that more frames become usable at a much higher level, and it's super awesome that that is achievable. So, this video was a good time to make. It's nice to be able to just, like, example, April Fool's this year, the video I put out was that Ember was super good. That's how bad it was. This video is not an April Fool's. This video is serious. Ember is good. Finally. So for those of you that like Ember,
Operator,
congratulations.
I've been thinking. My
You finally have a thing.
communication systems